In the frozen silence of the Arctic Circle, beneath the pale glow of the northern sky, one warship haunted the dreams of Allied commanders more than any other. Hidden deep within the icy fjords of northern Norway, shielded by mountains, anti-aircraft guns, minefields, and some of Hitler's most determined sailors, lay the German battleship Tirpitz, a floating fortress so powerful that its mere existence reshaped the course of World War II. To Adolf Hitler, Tirpitz was the pride of the Kriegsmarine, the embodiment of German naval supremacy and technological brilliance. To Britain's Prime Minister Winston Churchill, however, it was something far more terrifying. He called it simply the Beast. At over 52,000 tons fully loaded, armed with colossal 15-inch guns capable of obliterating enemy ships from more than 20 miles away, Tirpitz was one of the most powerful battleships ever built in Europe. She was the sister ship of the infamous Bismarck, the warship that had shocked the world by sinking HMS Hood, Britain's legendary battlecruiser, in a devastating engagement that left the Royal Navy humiliated and enraged. But while Bismarck met its fate in the Atlantic in 1941, Tirpitz survived. And that survival became a nightmare for the Allies. Stationed in the cold waters of occupied Norway, Tirpitz rarely ventured into open battle, yet she still managed to dominate the war at sea. Her looming presence alone forced Britain to divert enormous fleets, aircraft squadrons, submarines, and thousands of men simply to contain her. Every Arctic convoy carrying desperately needed supplies to the Soviet Union sailed under the shadow of possible annihilation if Tirpitz emerged from the fjords. She became what military strategists call a fleet in being, a weapon so dangerous that the enemy must constantly prepare for its use, even when it never fires a shot. The fear was justified. In 1942, during the disastrous Arctic Convoy PQ-17 operation, Allied commanders learned that Tirpitz was nearby. Panic spread instantly. Fearing the destruction of the entire convoy, British command ordered the ships to scatter. The result was catastrophic. German submarines and aircraft descended upon the isolated merchant vessels, sinking 24 ships in one of the worst convoy disasters of the war. Tirpitz had barely fired a single shell, yet its shadow alone had destroyed the convoy. From that moment forward, Churchill became obsessed with destroying the battleship. In one of the shortest wartime memorandums ever written, he sent a blunt message to Britain's naval leadership: "Where is Tirpitz?" That question would dominate Allied strategy for years. What followed was one of the greatest hunts in naval history. The Allies threw everything they had at the giant warship. Stealth commandos riding human torpedoes attempted to sneak beneath its hull. Midget submarines braved minefields and freezing waters to plant explosives directly under the ship. Carrier-based aircraft launched wave after wave of attacks against the heavily defended fjords. Bombers crossed thousands of miles through brutal Arctic weather, risking annihilation just for a chance to land a single hit. Again and again, Tirpitz survived. Bombs exploded around her. Torpedoes slammed into her hull. Explosive charges ripped open compartments and flooded engine rooms. Yet somehow, the great battleship endured. Scarred, damaged, and repeatedly crippled, she always returned, earning a fearsome reputation as the unsinkable battleship. For the Germans, Tirpitz became more than a weapon. It became a symbol of resistance and national pride. As long as the mighty ship remained afloat, Germany could still claim dominance in northern waters. But by 1944, the balance of the war had shifted dramatically. The Allies had gained mastery of the skies. Their bombers grew deadlier. Their intelligence networks became more sophisticated. Most importantly, British codebreakers had cracked Germany's Enigma communications, allowing the Allies to monitor the battleship's movements with terrifying accuracy. And then came a weapon unlike anything the world had seen before. Designed by brilliant engineer Barnes Wallis, the 12,000-pound Tallboy bomb was not an ordinary explosive. It was an earthquake bomb, engineered to penetrate deep into heavily armored targets before detonating with catastrophic force. Unlike conventional bombs, Tallboys could shatter bunkers, crack reinforced concrete, and even tear apart battleships from below. If any weapon could kill Tirpitz, this was it. In November 1944, after years of failed attempts, the Royal Air Force prepared one final mission: 30 Lancaster bombers, flown by some of Britain's finest airmen, took off from Scotland and headed north toward the Arctic Circle. Their target, Tirpitz, now anchored near Tromsø, Norway, weakened but still alive. The Germans believed the fjord's natural defenses and anti-aircraft batteries would protect the ship. They were wrong. As the bombers roared over the mountains and descended through the icy skies, the calm Arctic morning erupted into chaos. Sirens wailed. Anti-aircraft guns thundered. Black flak bursts filled the sky as German sailors desperately fought back. Then the Tallboys began to fall. Within minutes, explosions tore through the battleship. Massive shockwaves ripped open steel armor that had once seemed indestructible. One bomb smashed deep into the vessel's core. Another detonated alongside the hull with devastating force. Fires spread rapidly. Compartments flooded. The mighty ship began to list violently. And then came the final catastrophe. A colossal explosion erupted from within Tirpitz itself as one of its ammunition magazines detonated. A tower of fire and smoke blasted hundreds of feet into the Arctic sky. The gigantic warship rolled helplessly onto its side, trapping hundreds of sailors inside its steel carcass. After years of terrorizing the Allies, the beast was finally dead. The sinking of Tirpitz marked more than the destruction of a battleship. It symbolized the collapse of Nazi Germany's naval ambitions and the end of an era dominated by giant battleships. Air power had proven supreme. No fortress at sea, no matter how heavily armored, was beyond the reach of modern warfare. Beneath the freezing waters of Norway, the legend of Tirpitz disappeared forever, taking with it the last great shadow of Hitler's navy. The story of Tirpitz began long before the bombs fell over Norway. Its origins were rooted in Adolf Hitler's grand vision of rebuilding Germany into a military superpower after the humiliation of World War I. When Hitler rose to power in the early 1930s, he did not merely seek to strengthen Germany's army. He dreamed of restoring the nation's navy to a position of dominance capable of challenging the mighty Royal Navy of Britain. At the heart of this ambition stood the Bismarck-class battleships. Enormous warships designed to symbolize Germany's return as a global naval force. Among them, Tirpitz would become the most feared. Launched on April 1, 1939 at Wilhelmshaven, Tirpitz was named after Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, the architect of Germany's Imperial Navy before World War I. Even during its unveiling, the ship represented more than steel and weaponry. It was a declaration to Europe that Germany intended to dominate the seas once again. The battleship dwarfed nearly every naval vessel of its era. Fully loaded, Tirpitz displaced more than 52,000 tons and stretched over 250 meters long, nearly the length of 3 football fields. Massive steam turbines powered the giant vessel at speeds exceeding 30 knots, making it both heavily armed and surprisingly fast for its size. But what truly terrified the Allies were its guns. Tirpitz carried 8 monstrous 15-inch naval cannons mounted in 4 twin turrets named Anton, Bruno, Caesar, and Dora. Each shell fired from these weapons weighed nearly a ton and could obliterate enemy warships from over 35 kilometers away. Supporting them were dozens of secondary guns and an expanding network of anti-aircraft weapons designed to turn the skies around the ship into a wall of fire. Protected by thick steel armor belts and reinforced decks, Tirpitz was built to survive punishment that would sink ordinary ships. To many German sailors, it appeared invincible. However, the war Hitler launched in 1939 disrupted his own naval ambitions. Germany had planned an enormous expansion program known as Plan Z, a strategy intended to create a navy capable of rivaling Britain by the late 1940s. The plan envisioned aircraft carriers, dozens of battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and hundreds of U-boats. But war arrived too early. Instead of spending years constructing a world-class fleet, Germany found itself fighting Britain and France immediately. Resources were diverted toward tanks, aircraft, and the army. As a result, Tirpitz and its sister ship Bismarck became isolated giants, enormously powerful but lacking the naval support structure originally intended for them. Still, even 2 battleships were enough to threaten Allied control of the Atlantic. Britain's survival depended on maritime supply lines. Food, fuel, troops, and industrial supplies flowed constantly across the Atlantic Ocean from North America. If German surface raiders like Tirpitz broke into these shipping lanes, they could devastate Allied logistics and cripple Britain's war effort. The danger became horrifyingly real in May 1941 when Bismarck sank HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy. In a matter of minutes, Hood exploded and disappeared beneath the sea with nearly its entire crew. The destruction shocked Britain and proved that the new German battleships were capable of destroying even the Royal Navy's most legendary vessels. Although Bismarck itself was eventually hunted down and sunk days later, the existence of Tirpitz became even more alarming afterward. Churchill and the British Admiralty understood that if Tirpitz entered the Atlantic unchecked, it could wreak havoc on Allied shipping. As a result, Tirpitz became one of the highest priority targets of the war. Unlike Bismarck, however, Tirpitz rarely ventured into open ocean combat. Following Germany's occupation of Norway, the battleship was stationed within the country's deep northern fjords. These icy waterways provided natural protection from naval attack while positioning the ship close to the Arctic Convoy routes supplying the Soviet Union. From there, Tirpitz cast a constant shadow over Allied operations. Its mere presence forced Britain to maintain powerful fleets in northern waters. Aircraft carriers, battleships, submarines, and reconnaissance aircraft were permanently assigned to monitor the German warship. Massive resources were spent not because Tirpitz was actively attacking, but because of what it might do. The psychological impact was immense. This became painfully clear during Convoy PQ-17 in 1942. The Allied convoy, carrying vital supplies to the Soviet Union, learned that Tirpitz and German naval forces might intercept them. Fearing total destruction, British command ordered the convoy to scatter. The decision proved disastrous. Separated and vulnerable, the merchant ships were hunted down by German submarines and aircraft. 24 ships were destroyed in one of the worst convoy losses of the war. Remarkably, Tirpitz itself barely participated. The mere threat of its arrival had been enough to trigger catastrophe. Churchill's obsession with destroying the battleship intensified. The Allies initially attempted conventional air raids against Tirpitz, but these attacks achieved little. Norway's fjords provided excellent defensive cover, while smokescreens and heavy anti-aircraft defenses protected the vessel from bombing runs. Realizing standard tactics were insufficient, Britain turned toward increasingly daring operations. In October 1942, Operation Tidal attempted to use human torpedoes called chariots to infiltrate Norwegian waters and attach explosives directly to Tirpitz's hull. The mission demanded extraordinary courage. Commandos navigated freezing Arctic waters under constant risk of detection. The destruction of the German battleship Tirpitz marked the culmination of years of Allied effort in the Arctic campaign during World War II. Despite surviving early attacks, including midget submarine sabotage and Operation Source, the ship was repeatedly targeted by British air raids and the revolutionary Tallboy bombs designed by Barnes-Wallis. These attacks progressively crippled its operational capability and forced its relocation within Norway. In November 1944, Operation Catechism delivered the final blow when RAF Lancaster bombers struck with devastating precision, triggering internal explosions that capsized the vessel and killed over 900 crew members. Beyond its physical destruction, Tirpitz had long functioned as a psychological weapon, tying down Allied resources through the mere threat of action. Its sinking removed a major strategic concern, secured Arctic supply routes, and demonstrated the decisive dominance of air power over traditional battleship warfare. The event symbolized the end of an era in naval history. It also reshaped military doctrine and confirmed aircraft carriers as the future of naval supremacy worldwide strategic thinking forever.